My wife shouted, "I can't live in this prison anymore. I'm leaving." I calmly replied, "Do what you need to do." The next day, my lawyer sent her an itemized bill for her share of the mortgage she hadn't paid in a year. Her sobbing voicemails from her mother's house. Got a voicemail from my mother-in-law this morning. 23rd one since the mediation hearing 2 weeks ago. Haven't listened to any of them, but I can see they're getting longer. This latest one runs 12 minutes. Probably another speech about forgiveness and second chances. Rich coming from a woman on her third marriage who still introduces me as Rachel's current husband at family gatherings. My wife Rachel moved back to her mother's house 3 months ago after declaring our home a prison. According to her Instagram, she's on a journey of self-liberation. According to her lawyer's latest settlement proposal, that journey requires 70% of our assets and indefinite spousal support. But let me start from the beginning because this situation took 2 years to explode and another 6 months to reach this point. I'm Tom, 52, and I own a chain of 5 tire shops. Started with one location 20 years ago, built it up through long hours and reinvesting everything. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well and keeps 40 people employed. Met Rachel 15 years ago when she brought her car in for new tires. She was 33, recently divorced from an artist who'd spent their savings on a failed gallery. She worked as a dental hygienist and said she wanted stability this time. "I'm done with dreamers," she told me on our 3rd date. "I want someone who has their feet on the ground." Should have noticed she defined herself by what she was running from, not what she was running to. But I was 37, established, and ready to settle down with someone who seemed to appreciate hard work. We married 2 years later. Nice wedding, nothing extravagant. Bought a 4-bedroom colonial in a good neighborhood, the kind with mature trees and kids riding bikes. Rachel kept working for about a year after the wedding, then quit. Said she wanted to focus on making her house a home. I was fine with it. The shops were doing well, and I liked the idea of someone actually being home when I got there. First few years were great. Rachel threw herself into homemaking like it was her calling. Decorated every room, learned gourmet cooking, hosted dinner parties that made us popular in the neighborhood. She seemed genuinely happy. We talked about kids, but she wanted to wait until she felt ready. I didn't push. Around year 5, the restlessness started. "Don't you want more than this?" She asked one night over dinner. "More than what?" "This routine. Work, home, sleep, repeat. That's called life, Rachel. What do you want to do?" "Travel, see the world, have adventures." "So, let's plan a trip." "Where do you want to go?" "It's not about a trip. It's about freedom to be spontaneous." Hard to be spontaneous when you run a business. Maybe that's the problem. That became her theme. Maybe the business was the problem. Maybe the house was the problem. Maybe the town was the problem. Never that. Her expectations were the problem. Year 7 brought the renovation obsession. Kitchen wasn't modern enough. Bathrooms needed updating. Basement should be finished. I went along because I wanted her happy and we could afford it. Spent about $120,000 total over 2 years. Each project just led to another complaint. "This house has no soul," she announced after we'd completely renovated it. "It's too perfect, too suburban. You designed every inch of it." I was trying to make it something it's not. Year 10 was when she discovered wellness culture. Started with yoga classes, escalated to retreats and workshops, life coaches, meditation gurus, self-discovery weekends. I didn't object if it helped her find purpose, money well spent. The retreats got more expensive and frequent. A weekend in Sedona, a week in Costa Rica, 2 weeks in Bali. Always coming back with new vocabulary about authentic living and spiritual awakening. Started talking about how our life was unconscious and inauthentic. What's inauthentic about it? I asked after a 3rd Bali trip. Everything, this house, this neighborhood, this life, it's also programmed by who? Society, expectations. The matrix of suburban conformity. The matrix of suburban conformity. Where'd you get that? You wouldn't understand. You've never questioned anything. I question why we need to spend $8,000 to sit in silence in Bali. See, you reduce everything to money because everything costs money. That's such limited thinking. Year 11 brought her friendship with Marissa. met her at a workshop about radical authenticity. Marissa was everything Rachel thought she wanted to be. Single at 45, living in a downtown loft, calling herself a life artist, which seemed to mean she lived off her divorce settlement while making vision boards. Suddenly, our life was embarrassing. Our house was a prison. Marriage was outdated. My work ethic was toxic productivity. Everything stable was suspect. Marissa's flying to Peru next week for an ayahuasca ceremony. Rachel would say, "Just booked it yesterday. Must be nice to have that freedom. You could go to Peru. We have savings." That's not the point. She doesn't have to ask anyone or plan around someone else's schedule because she has no responsibilities. Exactly. No prison bars. Started couples therapy that year. Rachel picked the therapist, Dr. Linda, who spent most sessions exploring how traditional marriage structures constrain feminine evolution. When I mentioned that Rachel hadn't worked in 10 years and had unlimited freedom to pursue her interests, Dr. Linda said, "I was weaponizing financial dependence." How is supporting someone weaponizing anything? I was accused of creating a dynamic where she needed my permission, but she didn't need it. She spent $60,000 on retreats without asking once. The fact that I even knew the amount became proof of a power imbalance. There was no winning. If I supported her, I was controlling. If I asked questions, I was financially abusive. If I mentioned she could work, I was shaming her choices. Year 12 was when Marissa entered the picture. Suddenly, there were weekend trips to the city and week-long artist retreats that mostly involved wine and long rants about men. Every time she came home, there was a new grievance about her life. Marissa says marriage is a patriarchal construct designed to control women's sexuality and labor. Marissa's been divorced 3 times. Maybe not the best marriage counselor. She's experienced, Rachel said. She's lived. And me? I'd built a home, created a life, been a partner, and apparently a prisoner. That word started showing up everywhere. The house was a prison. Marriage was a prison. The neighborhood, my schedule, even the grocery list, all prisons. Everything that provided structure became a form of captivity. 6 months ago, things hit a breaking point. She came back from one of Marissa's workshops, 8 divorced women drinking wine and validating each other's bitterness, and stormed into the house, vibrating with righteous fury. "I've had an awakening," she said. "Another one, don't mock me. This is serious. I'm dying here, spiritually, emotionally. This house, this life, it's killing everything real about me. What do you want to do about it? I need space. Real space. To find out who I am without all these constraints." What constraints? You do whatever you want. I do what I want within the prison of being Mrs. Tom Gardner in this suburban tomb. So what do you want? Freedom. Liberation. A chance to live. Meaning, I'm moving out. Tonight. I need to find myself without you watching and judging. I'm not stopping you. She seemed almost disappointed I didn't fight. Packed dramatically while listing all the ways I'd held her back by providing stability. Left for her mother's house. Promising to work on herself. I changed the locks the next day. Not out of spite, but because she'd been careless with keys and I didn't know who had copies. I texted her about it, just so she'd know. That one text set off a storm. How dare I change the locks on our house? Financial abuse. Control. Maybe even illegal. I called Gary, my lawyer, the next morning. He's handled my business for years, also does family law. She left voluntarily? He asked. Packed her bags and announced she was leaving to find herself. Any kids? No. She could never decide. How long since she worked? 13 years. She'll want support, probably a lot. She's a licensed hygienist and perfectly healthy. Doesn't matter. You enabled her lifestyle. You'll have to maintain it. For how long? Depends on a judge. Could be years. Could be forever. That's insane. That's marriage. Now, let's talk strategy. Rachel hired Marissa's divorce attorney, a guy named Brad, apparently known for empowering women through divorce. The first proposal was absurd. The house, lifetime support, and 70% of assets. Gary laughed. They're anchoring high, he said. It's a tactic. We gathered evidence. 13 years of voluntary unemployment, over $400,000 spent on self-growth, retreats, coaches, shopping. social media posts about escaping the prison. The forensic accountant found she'd been transferring small sums into a personal account for months and had opened secret credit cards, $30,000 in debt on retreats and investments in herself. The first mediation was a train wreck. Rachel showed up in new designer clothes, glowing with spiritual superiority. When asked about work, she said she was exploring possibilities in the wellness space. "What does that mean?" the mediator asked. "I'm training to be a life coach, helping women break free from limiting beliefs." "Where are you training?" "Various workshops and online programs." "Are you certified?" Certification is just patriarchal gatekeeping. The mediator, an older woman, peered over her glasses. "And how do you plan to support yourself?" "That's why we're here. Tom kept me financially dependent for 13 years. He owes me support while I rebuild. Records show you had a housekeeper twice a week, a gardener, pool service, and regular meal deliveries," the mediator said. "There's more to maintaining a home than chores," Rachel replied. "What did you contribute then?" "Emotional labor, spiritual energy, creating harmony." The mediator blinked. "I see receipts for over $70,000 in retreats last year. Were those part of home maintenance?" By the second mediation, her demands had shifted again. Now she wanted credit for unpaid domestic labor, valuing her role at $150,000 a year. Gary nearly choked on his coffee. "How did you calculate that?" the mediator asked. "It's what it would cost to hire a house manager, chef, decorator, and life organizer. But you had a housekeeper, used meal delivery, and spent most of your time at retreats. What exactly were you managing?" "The emotional ecosystem of our home." "Can you quantify that?" "Not everything valuable can be quantified. That's Tom's problem. He reduces everything to numbers." "This is a financial negotiation," the mediator reminded her. "Numbers are relevant." The breakthrough came when Rachel's credit card statements were fully examined. Not just the amounts, but where the money went. Turns out, many of her retreats were luxury resorts. The wellness workshops included spa packages and shopping trips. One consciousness expansion intensive turned out to be a wine-tasting cruise. Her lawyer tried to argue they were legitimate self-care expenses. The mediator wasn't buying it. "Mrs. Gardner," she said, "you spent $42,000 last year on something called a goddess activation retreat in Tulum. Can you explain what that was?" "It was a transformative experience of feminine empowerment." According to the resort website, it was a 5-star, all-inclusive vacation with daily yoga classes. "That's a reductive description, but accurate," Rachel admitted. Her position weakened with every revelation. The life coach training she'd been doing turned out to be a series of Instagram courses about personal branding. The wellness investments were just luxury goods wrapped in spiritual language. Then came the real blow. Rachel had been telling people I was abusive and controlling, that she'd escaped a toxic marriage. She'd even talked about it on a podcast about survivor stories. Problem was her social media was filled with posts showing vacations, date nights, and retreats. Not exactly the portrait of a trapped woman. Hard to claim imprisonment when you've documented your freedom. My lawyer sent a cease and desist for defamation. Her lawyer got her to take the post down, but screenshots existed. Judges don't appreciate false abuse claims when the evidence says otherwise. Final mediation was 2 weeks ago. Rachel's demands had dropped, but she still wanted the house and substantial support. She arrived with Marissa for moral support, both dressed like they were headed to a wellness photo shoot. The mediator had done her homework. "Mrs. Gardner," she said, "you've stated you can't work because of the trauma of your marriage. Yet you left voluntarily, calling it liberation. Can you explain?" "Just because I left doesn't mean I wasn't traumatized." "By what specifically?" "The daily microaggressions, the spiritual suppression." "Can you give examples?" Tom never understood my journey. He'd make comments about retreat expenses. Noting that retreats cost money is traumatic? It's the energy behind it, the judgment. "I see. And now you want him to pay for more retreats." "I want support while I heal and build my authentic life. The same life you couldn't build during 13 years of financial support." Rachel started crying, not sorrowful tears, but frustrated ones. The mediator offered tissues and waited. "This isn't fair," Rachel said finally. I gave him 13 years. And what did you give him? My presence. My energy. Myself. And what did he give you? Money. She said it like it was meaningless. Just money, stability, a home. The prison you mentioned? The mediator asked. Rachel said nothing. The final agreement wasn't perfect for either of us, but it was fair. Rachel gets 2 years of rehabilitative support, $3,000 a month, to get back on her feet. We split the house equity evenly after the sale. She keeps about $40,000 she moved to personal accounts, but she's also responsible for the $30,000 in debt she created. Nous permanents alimony.